This is a video for those of you that are on a self-discovery journey, especially for those of you who are like me in your 30s. Maybe you've had a career, maybe you've, done a lot of different things in life and you feel lost. Maybe you feel at a crossroads. Maybe you feel frustrated. You maybe feel unfulfilled. I'm with you there. I've felt all of those things. And in a lot of ways, I still feel those ways, but the big change that I'm experiencing right now is really the power of self-discovery, of asking the right questions, of looking at my life from a different lens, all to kind of better understand myself. And really, I think one idea that I've been just repeating over and over is that a life that is aligned is a life worth living. And so all of the ideas I want to talk about today are about helping you align yourself with your life. And really, it's answering this question: how do I do more of what I love? How do I live a life aligned? And so that's what we're going to go down. This video is the result of many, many hours of research and work on my part, just to not just talk about my own life and my own experiences of navigating these questions, but also like some of history's greatest thinkers and entrepreneurs and people that have, at least from the outside, it seems that they found this life alignment. What were the questions they were asking? How did they think about their lives? What did they experience in order to kind of usher in success or love or abundance? Because I think that's ultimately what we're all after, right? How do we exist? And that enables more abundance in our lives. And so that's what we're going to go down. That being said, it would be a huge help for me if you guys could like and subscribe to this channel. I saw in my analytics that nearly 98% of you guys are not subscribed to the channel, but have watched the video. So, if this is helpful, I would love to reach more people and help even just one more person. So that's what I'm after. So I would love if you could do that for me. And one more kind of caveat is this is not like an exhaustive, comprehensive list. This is kind of me telling you things I'm learning in real time. And I want to say this is all coming from a place of real love. Love for myself, love for y'all, love for everyone out there who might really be suffering. Before you really embark on this journey of self-discovery, it's kind of a painful thing. It's painful to feel lost. It's painful to feel like you don't know who you are, especially in your 30s when you feel like your friends around you are starting to figure it out, when people around you are starting to settle and you still feel like maybe a kid who's lost and trying to figure it out. I know the pain, and that's why I'm creating these videos, because I want to give you tools, real practical tools on how to get out of that pain and really face yourself and hopefully get you to a place of more happiness. And so, yeah, that's what this video is about. I hope you guys enjoy it. We're going to dive right in. So the first thing I want to talk about are kind of two pillars that serve as a foundation for all of this. And the first pillar is this idea of, do you believe you were born for a very specific, non-random reason? That only you can live the life that was meant for you. And I think this is really important foundation, because if you don't believe this, like really truly in your heart, it's going to be really hard for you to continue on this journey of figuring it out. And actually, I'll read this quote from Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. He wrote it after he survived a concentration camp during World War II. And, he saw a lot of horrors. He saw kind of the total depths of humanity and how terrible people could be. And yet he wrote this book about meaning and how he still saw hope even in concentration camps, right? And so this is a quote from him. It reads, "One should not search for an abstract meaning of life. Everyone has his own specific vocation or mission in life to carry out a concrete assignment which demands fulfillment. Therein he cannot be replaced, nor can his life be repeated. Thus, everyone's task is as unique as is his specific opportunity to implement it." If I had to say this in simpler terms, it's that only you can live the life that you are meant to live. No one can replace you. You are here for a very specific reason, very specific purpose. The confluence of your experience, your upbringing, your skills, your interests, your curiosity, your personality, all of that makes it such that you have an opportunity to kind of find this life that nobody else could ever live. And I think that belief that you actually are here for a reason is foundation number one. And the second is related. It's, do you believe you deserve to live a life that is aligned, right? That is based off of your unique reason for being here on earth. I think that's important because a lot of us tend to self-sabotage, right? So, especially if you've lived a difficult life, especially if you've tried a lot of things and maybe failed a lot, you may not really feel that you deserve anything, or maybe you've tried and you've given up. This sense that I deserve actually live this life that I was made specifically for, whatever that means. This idea that I deserve to be happy. This idea that I deserve to be fulfilled and aligned. If you don't believe that, I don't think any of the other questions I'm going to give you, any of the other tools will be that helpful, because it's from that belief that I think the roots start to settle in, right? I'll actually read this quote from Gay Hendricks. He wrote a really cool book called The Big Leap. And he says this: each of us has an inner thermostat setting that determines how much love, success, and creativity we allow ourselves to enjoy. When we exceed our inner thermostat setting, we will often do something to sabotage ourselves, causing us to drop back into old familiar zone where we feel secure. And I read that quote to you because I think, like I said before, a lot of us self-sabotage. We don't really embody this belief that we deserve a better life, that there's something more interesting, something more unique, something much more aligned to me specifically. And so we kind of cap our enjoyment of life. Like, we just kind of go through the motions because we don't really believe that there's anything better for us out there. You need to believe that there's something better out there, and not just better, something specific only you can do. And without these kind of two beliefs, I think everything else will kind of fall on shallow sand, right? It's not going to be a strong foundation. So that's why I wanted to start there. But let's assume you guys believe you're here for a very specific reason, like I do. I believe I'm here on earth, the way I was brought up, my personality, my quirks, all of these things make for me to have a very specific mission in life. And I also believe I deserve it. I deserve to be happy. I deserve a life of fulfillment. Okay, with those foundations, we can kind of jump into, like I said in the beginning, the question we're here to kind of explore is, how do I do what I love? Now, this is a really tricky, broad question because in a lot of ways, we don't even know where to start, right? And so these questions, I hope, give you a starting point of places to explore. Again, they're not going to give you the entire story. They're not going to give you the full picture or the answer. They will give you a starting place. So the first question I think is really important for you to ask is, what do you take note of? And I mean this both literally and more metaphorically. So in a literal sense, it's take out your notes app, take out your journal, take out anything where you kind of organize ideas and to just look through the last couple months of notes. What are you noticing? What's sticking out to you? And I think this is a really good tool because what we notice are often the things that we care about, whether subconsciously or not, right? And so, a good example for me is in my Apple Notes, I have all of these ideas, I have all of these quotes, I have all of these things that other folks have said that I've collected over the years, because to me, ideas and words and quotes that I can kind of connect later down the road or connect to something happening in my life is really helpful. I like words and ideas. And so that to me is kind of a good starting place of like, okay, if I like words and ideas, what are things I can do with words and ideas? One thing is to make videos and content like this, right? So I think for you, take a moment to just survey, what do you take notice of? And I think a really cool example of this is actually this entrepreneur. His name is Danny Meyer. Many of you may not know his name, but you'll definitely know the name of his restaurant called Shake Shack. Danny Meyer created Shake Shack and a bunch of other, pretty well-known restaurants. And there's a story in his book, Setting the Table, where he talks about how he went on a trip to Europe to really kind of discover his passion for food. This was before he ever built his first restaurant. He just wanted to learn. And so he went to Europe, he followed chefs around, he staged, he looked at decor, he looked at wine list, he went on sourcing trips. And after a summer in Europe, on his flight back from Europe to New York, which was an 8.5 hour flight, he said it took him the entire time to organize the notes he had taken. And I think, like I had just said, like what we take note of is probably a really good source of inspiration and fuel, and kind of, again, it's a sign, it's a starting place for us to understand what we care about. So literally open your notes, open your journals, see what you've noticed in the last several months. Maybe there's a clue in there somewhere. Okay, number 2 is maybe one of the most important questions, and it's what feels like play to you and work to others? Now, it's really important that those two are next to each other. It can't just feel like play to you. It needs to feel like play to you, and in contrast, work to others. So a good example from my life, if you haven't seen my video about how K-drama led me to God, go watch that video because I talk about it there. But really briefly, I'll just say that, when I was a child, all my other friends were playing outside or playing games or Game Boy or, whatever they might have been doing. But for me, I really loved reading the Bible. Like, again, I know it's really strange for an 11-year-old kid to love reading the Bible. For most people, it's super boring. It literally puts them to sleep. But for me, it felt like play, right? And so I think the contrast is helpful. That's what I'm saying. What feels like play to you and work to others? I think that's a really good, question, or a good kind of filter to have while you're doing tasks, right? And this idea is repeated throughout history. I'll read another quote again from Gay Hendricks, who wrote The Big Leap. He says, "What work do I do that doesn't seem like work? I can do it all day long without ever feeling tired or bored." That's another kind of heuristic, another test, right? Naval Ravikant, who's a well-known investor, entrepreneur, and thinker, he said this: "The way to get out of the competition trap is to be authentic, to find a thing you know how to do better than anybody. You know how to do it better because you love it, and no one can compete with you. If you love to do it, be authentic, and then figure out how to map that to what society actually wants. Apply some leverage and put your name on it. You take the risk, but you gain the rewards. Have ownership and equity in what you're doing, and just crank it up." That was a long quote, but the big thing here is getting out of this trap. I think that many of us feel, especially when we're just starting this journey of self-discovery, is that it's a trap. Like, it feels like living is a trap. We're trapped into this rat race. We're trapped into doing things we don't want to do. How do we get out of that trap? You figure out the thing you can do better than anyone because you love it. It feels like play to you. For me, doing these YouTube videos feels like play. The research feels invigorating. The actual recording of these videos feels like I'm talking to a close friend, right? It needs to feel like play, because only when it feels like play will you keep doing it. Only when you keep doing it will you get better. And so that's question number 2. What feels like play to you and work to others? Okay, let's move on to question number 3. This is kind of related, but it's, what were you drawn to as a child? I got this because I was listening to this biography on Estee Lauder. And you guys probably know Estee Lauder. She's the founder of the beauty company, Estee Lauder. It's now like a $16 billion company. When Estee talks about her childhood, she says this: "After school, I'd run home to practice being a scientist. I began to value myself so much more, trust my instincts, trust my uniqueness. Trusting in oneself does not always come naturally. I learned that practice sticks." And so I read that because for Estee Lauder, she built this entire company over 80 plus years because it started from this childhood obsession with beauty. When she says she'd run home to practice being a scientist, it was because her uncle was a skin specialist. I think that's what they were called back in the day, right? I guess now they would be called estheticians or something, but he would create these creams and all these products to help women feel more beautiful. And so she would go home and she would run home to work with her uncle on creating these products. And at the time, she was probably 8 years old. And so I think for even for me, when I look back as a child, I'm like, okay, what was I really drawn to? What came naturally to me? What did I do as a child where I didn't really do it for recognition? I didn't do it for any other reason other than I really liked it. And I think for a lot of you, you guys might be like, well, I like to play video games. That doesn't really tell me anything. Or I like to play outside. It doesn't really tell me anything. I think if it starts to feel like that, maybe dig a little layer deeper. What about it specifically did you enjoy, right? Like all of us probably played outside. For me, what I really enjoyed when I played outside like other kids, the unusual part was I just loved exploring water. I would be in the backwoods of Georgia, running along creeks and going in water and getting wet and looking for frogs or other animals. And I think to me, that signals that I was just a naturally curious kid. That curiosity is what stands out to me. Like there are certain things that I just cared a lot about, and I couldn't tell you why, but I think the curiosity is kind of the key theme that stayed with me for the rest of my life. I'm not like, I would say most people just don't care about most things, right? They're just, maybe they're jaded, maybe, whatever. They're so busy or tired, they just can't care. But for me, I'm so curious about so many things, so many ideas, so many people that I start to learn a lot. And that to me becomes an advantage. That to me becomes something I can practice and hone. And so that's how I would start thinking about connecting things you are drawn to as who you are today, right? Those might also be really nice signs or nice clues as to who you can and ought to be. And the fourth question is this: when are you at ease? Now, this question came also from Naval Ravikant's biography, but it was really just a visual. And the visual is this: it's a straight line, and it says, tension is who you think you should be. Relaxation is who you are, and there's a wavy line. And I think this is really important because I don't know if you guys have ever experienced this, but maybe you're in a situation where you're uncomfortable. You feel insecure. You feel like you should be somebody. And I think this probably happens a lot at like networking events. Think about how your body feels. It's tense. You're kind of awkward. You're uncomfortable. Maybe it's hard for you to look at people in the eye, whatever it might be. That tension is because you're trying to be somebody that is not natural to you. Who you are is probably a very relaxed place, right? Think about when you're most yourself. That place feels pretty natural. It's a relaxed feeling. When I'm doing these YouTube videos even, I'm very relaxed. I'm not trying to be smarter than anybody. I'm not trying to be impressive, right? I'm not pitching an investor or anything like that. I'm just talking to people from a place of love, and hopefully it comes across as very natural and relaxed. And I think for you guys, this is also another litmus test. It's another filter to say, okay, in what situation do I actually feel at ease? That might be a signal for you to be like, oh, this activity that I was doing where I felt really relaxed or where I felt myself, maybe there's something here. Maybe there's something worth exploring. So again, it's another filter for you to kind of get closer to this question of, how do I do more of what I love? And the last question is, what can I produce without stopping? This question comes from this quote by Paul Graham, who is another kind of investor, entrepreneur. He founded Y Combinator in San Francisco, which helps fund a lot of early stage startups. And he said this: another test you can use is always produce. For example, if you have a day job you don't take seriously because you plan to be a novelist, are you producing? Are you writing pages of fiction, however bad? As long as you're producing, you'll know you're not merely using the hazy vision of the grand novel you plan to write one day as an opiate. The view of it will be obstructed by all the too palpably flawed ones you're actually writing. So basically what he's saying here is, when you love something, you're able to produce it even if it's bad, right? Because you love to do that thing. And I think that's what it comes down to. And I think for you guys, it's another thing to think when you review your life, when you take stock of the things you've done. What have you produced over the years? What have you created over the years without really stopping? I think that's a really nice signal to be like, oh, wait, I've done this thing for many years, maybe not even consciously or not even without thinking too hard about it. Is there something there? I must have done it for all these years for a reason. Right? And so that question of what have you or what can you produce without stopping is another great filter. And so those are the 5 questions I'll leave you guys with, and I'll repeat them here again is, what do you take note of? What feels like play to you and work to others? What were you drawn to as a child? When are you at ease? And what can you produce without stopping? I think those 5 questions will be an amazing starting point for a lot of you on thinking about your own self-discovery, thinking about aligning your life with more things you love to do. And yeah, again, I'll say this, that I really believe this stuff. First of all, I really believe that each and every single one of you are here for a reason, that you're supposed to live a life that nobody else in history can or will ever live. And I believe that you deserve to live a life that is full of fulfillment and alignment and happiness. And lastly, I believe that by you going on this journey, you kind of make yourself and therefore those around you better for doing it. And so that's why I want to put this out there. It's really coming from a place of love and optimism and hope for you, for myself. I truly believe in these ideas and these questions. And so I hope they're helpful. I hope it brings even a little bit more clarity to you. And yeah, please drop a note in the comments. Tell me what questions you ask yourself. What's helped you in your self-discovery? I think as we start to build even like hopefully a community of folks that are also thinking about these things, we can continue to be helpful to one another. So that's it for today, y'all. So again, please like, subscribe, leave me a note. I love to see it all. Until next time, thanks, y'all.